Daredevil Born Again, episodes 3 and 4. We've seen them. We've got many a thought on that, and just kind of, I guess, since Sykes is joining us for the first time for these reviews, we're going to let you kind of start us off, give you your overall thoughts on the show so far. But yeah, thanks for jumping in with us. And I think it's been since me and you did the hopes and fears video not too long ago, so it hasn't been that long, but yeah, a little bit at least. But welcome back, and we're glad to have you.
Yeah, glad to be back and glad to be reviewing Daredevil. I think last week or the week before when you guys were recording, some basketball stuff came up, so I wasn't able to hop on. But I don't know. I'll give my quick thoughts. Maybe it's just because I didn't watch the series again before the new episodes, but in the first two episodes, especially the first one, I was kind of confused at what was going on in the series. I kind of wish that there would have been at least some type of like preamble or like refresher for people that had myself hadn't gone watched the series. And I mean, I kind of understood the premise as far as you guys have done spoilers and stuff, right? So I can say like
this is a spoiler review. We talked about that. We did do spoilers in our first two, so this is a spoiler going forward as well into episodes 3 and 4. So,
well, one thing I really didn't like about the first couple of episodes, especially the first one, was they hyped up bringing back the whole group, the whole gang back together, and then within like the first 10 minutes of the show, they kill Foggy off, which is like seriously, you say you're bringing all these guys back, you say you're doing all these rewrites, you're going to make it just like the previous one, and then you immediately kill off arguably one of the best characters in the show. It really confused me. How they introduced Bullseye was weird. They didn't really even give any like backstory on that or any like future story on that. They like, and I guess we'll talk about it in 3 and 4, where they're like, "Oh, by the way, that was Bullseye," and I'm just like, "Okay, like, cool. I guess that's it. That's all you get." But
he feels very much like a plot device in that episode. Like he doesn't really serve a narrative purpose outside of like moving us into the events of 1 year later when he's trying to not be Daredevil and all of this stuff. So I feel like it to me, it feels like a plot device of, oh yeah, by the way, last time we saw him, he was being imprisoned and having surgery, and now he's out and he's good again, and he's out to kill, which, out to kill them is understandable because of the events of season 3, but like you said, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because it's like, oh, they just kind of expect you to assume a lot of things without really explaining anything with him. Yeah. So, yeah. It's a weird transition. The whole first 5 to 10 minutes feels very all over the place because because like something that I saw in another review was the fact that people said you have to remember that Kingpin was in Hawkeye and he was in Echo, and those two shows tie into his backstory. So like his whole thing is like when he was talking about recovering from a vigilante attack, I thought he was talking about Daredevil season 3 where he gets the crap beat out of him at the end of the season. That's what I was, yeah. But he was talking about Echo, and so that's like that.
And then Daredevil has a lot in the back half of the She-Hulk season 2, I believe. I never finished it.
So he's in like one episode, I think, isn't he?
But that's where you see like one of the suits that he's got.
Yeah. So they it's weird because they bring in characters from the original show, yet they're also bringing in elements of the MCU, and it feels very much like a paper mache, just like they're just kind of sticking things all on this one ball and trying to shape it into something, and it's just like it just seems really messy to me when it just starting out. But Yeah, it's hard to follow because they, like you said, they don't give you any kind of preamble or any, intro into it. It's just like, boom, you're there,
Yeah, and I thought maybe there would be maybe it's like boom, you're there, and then they'll go back and like explain what happened, but they're just like, no, just keep going forward as
Through
if
4
like
episodes, we haven't gotten any explanation to any of
no,
that other
no.
than
It's like the first
I
episode.
don't think we're going to.
Well, it's like the first 2 episodes didn't do anything besides just show that like Daredevil is going to try not to be Daredevil anymore. Like that.
and Kingpin's not going to try to be Kingpin.
Yeah.
Which to me, like this is something I'll talk about, especially with episode 4. But that's like the worst possible move to make when you're trying to get people back into this show. The 2 best characters from the original show are not playing the parts that they played in the original show. And so I think a lot of the reason I've had trouble getting into this season is because the first 3 seasons, you always, for one, he's always Daredevil in all 3 seasons. And Kingpin's Kingpin in all 3 seasons. In the brief time he's in season 2, obviously he's in like 2 or 3 episodes. But there's always that juxtaposed with like their day-to-day lives of like him being a lawyer, and there's some sort of case that they're working, or maybe he's trying to use the law to get information on Fisk or whatever it might be. So there's always that sort of, you got those 2 plot threads moving at once. Plus you got all these side characters that are kind of interesting, like Ben Urich and Frank Castle. And, so they're moving a lot of different things, but it's all sort of conjoined together into the larger plot. But then like with this one, it's like, oh, by the way, Kingpin's mayor now, Matt's still a lawyer, but he's not with the same lawyer, not with his buddy anymore. And Karen's gone. And there's this other lady that's not super interesting that's there now. And like also Wilson Fisk and his wife are having marital issues. I don't want to talk about that. That frustrates me. Oh, and by the way, neither of them are the most interesting parts of their characters, which are, the vigilante or the villain type of the character. So it just, to me, it's like they're trying real hard to play who they're not. And
I think that's part of it.
It's supposed to be, but to me, when the surrounding story is very vague right now, because like I don't feel like they've established a concrete like plot for the show, other than the fact that it's Kingpin's trying to be mayor and Matt's trying not to be Daredevil and just live a normal life. Like that's not a plot. That's just I
think that's where it is where we're at. I'm not arguing that, but I think that's maybe part of what they're trying to portray. And then you see that I think in episode 4 where there's no fights or anything like that in episode 4, but you're getting more into the, it's kind of got a continuous, deliberate, measured build up. So they're starting to kind of explore the internal conflicts of the 2, right? So like Wilson Fisk, like they get more into the, well, you're not, she asked, I can't remember if it was I guess it was episode 4. She asked his wife, do you feel safe with him?
Yeah, it was episode
4. And then Matt, and we'll talk about it more, I'm sure, but the interaction between Matt Murdock and Frank Castle and wherever that was at. I mean, that was great.
Probably the best 10 minutes of the show. So
I literally was going to say that section of the show made me realize how much I love Frank Castle, and I forget the guy's name, but the actor that plays Frank Castle, he was
John Bernthal.
Yeah, he was in Walking Dead too, and he was one of my favorite characters in Walking Dead. And
he did not miss a beat as Frank Castle. Like he stepped in even more so to me than Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio stepped back into that. Like he was even more, like he felt like the exact same character. Whereas I feel like with Kingpin and Daredevil / Matt Murdock, they feel like a different version of their character, which I know they're supposed to be in. When I say a different version, I don't mean like, obviously, yes, in the plot, they've changed his characters. Like, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, they don't feel like, to me, Matt acts different than he does in the first 3 seasons. Like his attitude about some things is different, which, whatever. And then Kingpin feels, and I guess it's because of that stuff he went through in Echo. He's like, there's some of these scenes where he feels like, because he's like a really dark and brooding figure that doesn't talk much in the original 3 seasons. And then he'll go to these schools with these kids and he'll get up and clap and he's kind of animated. I'm like, yeah,
Well,
that feels.
I think that's
feels
part of
out
the
of
build up.
place.
Like he's gonna explode. You know what I mean? Like he's just gonna lose it. But I mean,
No, and that's probably the case. I mean, I would wager that's what they're going for. But
I think so. And then the character, the introduction of the new character, I have no idea what they call that guy.
Muse,
I don't know
the dude with like the weird
collecting all the blood. Yeah. So
that's Muse apparently.
And correct me if I'm wrong. There's already confirmed 2 seasons of this, right? Like they're going to do 2 seasons of Daredevil Born Again.
Yes and no. I talked about this briefly in the first review. So the original plan for the show was to be an 18-episode season. So basically all they've done is split that one long season into 2. So basically it's season 1, part 2, essentially. Okay. Even though they're calling it season 2. So
it wouldn't surprise me a bit to like only get to like what the main reason of the plot is at the end of the season,
which would kind of suck to me, to be honest. Give us a reason to get invested in the plot, but in order to do that, you have to give us a plot. And like, no good TV show is going to give you a plot at episode 8 and 9. They're going to start the plot at 1 or 2. Like you need to at least give us the evidences that of what the plot is going to be or what they're shooting for.
I think we're gathering the pieces. I don't think that'll be the case. I think we're gathering the pieces of the plot. I think they could easily tie it all together in a bow.
Well, let me pose it in this way. So like, let's just use the first 3 seasons as an example, obviously, because it's supposed to be a sequel. But like season 1, the plot in the first episode is laid out as you start to, of course, it's an introduction to the characters first and foremost. So you get, Karen's character. She wakes up on the floor. She's got a knife in her hand, dead body in front of her. It starts the wheel turning. That is the ignition for the plot going forward, because then we learn as that goes on that it's all tied to Wilson Fisk and his plot to do everything. But from the first point of the episode, that first scene sets all of that up, and it's always moving towards that conclusion. Whereas you look at season 2, like the first scene is a bunch of Irish dudes getting shot up in a bar, and it's like that sets the stage for the whole Frank Castle arc. And then in season 3, you have, him waking up in the church, and he's been, survived the things that happened in the Defenders, and now and then you see all this stuff with Wilson Fisk orchestrating his escape. And so now, like, they set it up in the first episode every time. And whereas in this one, it's like things happen, but there's no, to me, like, even though Kingpin becomes mayor and Matt sort of, he reacts to that negatively, but he doesn't, like, then he just kind of moves on in the next episode. He's not really pursuing him. He's not trying to take him down. He just kind of threatens him, and then he moves on. And so from that point on, there's really no plot other than like Kingpin's doing mayor stuff and Matt's doing lawyer stuff. And like there's no overarching plot outside of this like side plot with White Tiger and
that we know of yet.
Yeah, and the White Tiger stuff could go somewhere with the whole, but they don't, like, once he talk, I don't know, it just once
he talks to his niece, that kind of felt like
it just, nothing feels continuous, if that makes sense. There's no, like, you can have subplots, but you need an overarching plot, and I feel like the show has yet to give us the big picture, and I think that's where I'm like, that's why I haven't been able to get hooked in the plot as much, because I don't feel like there is much of one right now, if that makes sense.
it looks like from what I feel watching this show, it feels like a show that was rewritten.
That's because it was.
It was a lot.
That's my point, right? Like it feels like there's and maybe you're right that maybe all of it's coming to a head at the end of the season, right? Maybe like these are bits and pieces to a puzzle that are going to come together, but like.
But could you put your finger on any one thing now that says this is the overarching plot?
I think that I think it's like you mentioned, and you said it better than I could have really. The actual act of Matt and Kingpin playing and trying to be people they're not.
That just sounds really boring to me. Like I don't know. It's an interesting concept. That's an interesting concept of, hey, let's see if they can resist their greater demons kind of thing.
Because I mean, as soon as Matt hits Frank in the face, he's like, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I just don't think that's really a plot. I think that's just kind of like character. It's some character development, but it's not really because the plot's supposed to be sort of exist outside of just the characters themselves and what they're doing. Like there's supposed to be some external events going on that push the plot too. So that's my argument. Is like the external stuff doesn't really.
The end of
there's not a lot there.
The end of episode 3 does something.
And that's what I'm saying. And then it kind of drops it at the beginning of episode 4, and you're like, I mean, I guess he goes to Frank to talk to him about the bullet, but even in that conversation, he's like, "This is your bullet," but he never really makes it seem like,
"Is it you?"
No, he knows, and so it's like, is he just going like Frank said? Are you just here so I can tell you to give you permission or something? Which didn't really make sense to me. But like, why do you need his permission to be Daredevil? Yeah, I don't know, but I don't. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Sykes. Go ahead.
Well, maybe and this is just me spitballing. Maybe if we take the title of the series literally, right? Instead of just a title, maybe it's, Matt rediscovering why he became Daredevil and sort of going through this, I don't know, transformation to, not doing things because of revenge or, whatever it may be that we kind of saw at times in the original, 3 seasons, right? And maybe he's going to become this vigilante for the, I don't know, maybe greater good. And then for Kingpin, you saw it a little bit in episode 4 where he's going back to his old Kingpin ways, with the guy that's chained up or whatever it was.
Well, he's kind of shown that too in other episodes. There's the one episode where he, I think it's episode 2 or 3, where he, I think he kind of insinuates at the end of episode 3, right when White Tiger gets shot, that he had something because he's having the conversation with the person at the same time that White Tiger's walking the street, and then he kind of says something like, he makes a vague comment that makes it sound like he had something to do with White Tiger getting shot.
The scene he does with the police commissioner.
Yes, yeah, that's the other one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Basically threatens his family.
But like that's the thing, like Kingpin, even though he says he's trying, everything in the background is telling us he's not. Like you said at the end of episode 4, the guy chained up in his basement, and then like Matt is actually trying not to be Daredevil. Yeah. Like he's actively resisting it, whereas Kingpin's just like pretending. Right. And maybe that's the point, is that and I think what we saw at the end of episode 4 is obviously, and I think we will see him in the suit in episode 5. But I think he's finally realized that maybe it's with because the whole conversation he had with the guy in prison that he was trying to get him out.
Oh yeah, that was weird.
It was kind of like I was trying to figure out how it connected, and the only thing that I can point to is that maybe it was supposed to be some kind of motivation to, like, because he was talking about how the system's messed up and he's got to, because he can't feed himself, and I'm like, I guess, but like if you break laws, you go to prison. Like that's just kind of like I get like that doesn't justify you doing it. But at the same time, I guess maybe what we're trying to go with is that like that the city and the system is broken and they need Daredevil. But to me, it just came across as like all the stuff he's saying just sounds like Matt needs to fight that as a lawyer, not as a like it wasn't really vigilante things that he was arguing about. It was more like general, like the system, the laws and stuff, the judicial system and everything was messed up. Which Daredevil, I guess you could make that like they could say like because the law doesn't work, you need to go be a vigilante and do stuff outside the law. I don't really know what point they were trying to make with that whole plot, but they wasted a lot of time in episode 4 focusing on that.
Yeah.
So I like to think that's what they were going for, but the whole time that scene was going on, I was like, please tell me, like, please show me why this is relevant. And it's like, I don't know that they really ever do. I don't know.
I think that went directly into the Frank Castle scene, did it not? Where Frank was asking him whether or not, the guy got justice for killing Foggy. Bullseye got justice for killing Foggy. And he was like, well, he got life. And he was like, well, and this was like the most sticking point to me watching it. And he was like, well, did Foggy get life? And so maybe it was something like starting with that conversation with the guy about the system. And then that going into him talking to Frank Castle about, whether or not the person that killed his best friend, got what was served to him, the justice that was needed for what he did. And so maybe you're right. Maybe in episode 5, you do see him suit up because like he's realizing that, like you said, the system isn't broken from the guy that was in the jail that stole whatever dessert that he stole.
Well, they said his rap sheet was like pages and pages long. So I'm like, the dude's not a saint. He's not, he's not like he may be hard up on food and money and stuff, but he's been doing this stuff for a long, long time. So I don't know. It's one of I think the problem the show has sometimes is that they don't do a very good job of communicating how certain scenes connect to the narrative. I think they feel very isolated sometimes and like they're very vague. Like you don't really know the point they're trying to make when the scene's over, because like every scene, if it's not feeding into the narrative, it's a waste. Or if it's not character development of some kind, it's a waste. It's like we can have this long 5-minute scene of the aide to Wilson Fisk in the club, and the whole time he's just there for him to leak information. And it's like you can do that in a very short period of time. And it's like there's just scenes where I'm like, did we really need that? Like, and then where they cut to the people on the street and they're interviewing them. I'm like, I guess they're trying to make it a more modern thing. But every time they cut to that, I'm just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, it just feels like a waste to me. I don't know. I feel like with the original show, it's not perfect. Like, it has its issues, but I think it always did a good job of carrying you along from scene to scene and making it all connect really well, and also helping you to see where it was going. And I think the difference here is that they haven't done as good a job of stringing everything together. Like you said, it feels like it's been rewritten, and it feels like it's been reshot to where like they've kept some stuff from the original and they've cut some stuff out, and because they filmed 6 episodes, then they scrapped them and then they restarted, and so maybe some of those 6 episodes made their way into this. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. It just at times I'm just kind of scratch my head and I go, I don't really know what the point of that was. I hope they explain it, and then a lot of times they just don't, and so I'm like, I don't know what to do about that, but. Yeah,
but I do agree with you about the therapy scenes with Fisk and Vanessa. Either they need to like lead the sentence of that pretty quick or drop it.
They're so long, they drag on, and I'm like,
I get it. They're trying to do character development, but like you could pull. I don't even know her name. Is her name Sophia or something?
Vanessa, the wife?
No, the therapist. You could pull her out and put Dr. Banner in there, and it wouldn't matter. Like she's so uninteresting.
But see, to me, they were more effective with that dynamic when it was just him and her sitting at the dinner table talking. about the issues they had in their marriage. I'm like, you could have done it with, you could have removed like you said, they removed the therapist is not even in that scene. And it's actually a pretty good scene because they're talking about the reasons why they
and like
split and everything.
The what's the girl's, or that girl that Matt goes and sees to try and get this guy out of the 30 days. Him and that actress had more chemistry than the love interest. That's why I don't.
Right.
The love interest made no sense to me, by the way. Like that just like came out of nowhere, and I was just like, oh.
Well, apparently she's a comic book character. Like she's actually one of his love interests, according to people who know stuff about that. But yeah, and apparently the lawyer chick, Kirsten or whatever, is also in the comics. And the people that I've watched that actually follow it say like the love interest in the comics, she's fine, but like the lawyer in the comics they said is kind of a crap character in the comics. And so like she's kind of just bland in the show, kind of like the detective guys just kind of bland too. Like they're not really, they're like, let's take, basically the detective guy's doing what Karen was doing and Kirsten is Foggy, and they're just like less interesting versions of those characters. Yeah. And so, which I don't know. I mean, like you said it, Christian, like you were disappointed at the beginning that they take the time to go out of their way and say all these people are coming back. And like, I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see Frank Castle again the rest of the season. I would not be shocked if that's a cameo and then he's gone. Yeah. But like, I feel like I'm afraid what they've done, and I say this because we have reason to be cautious of everything Disney does these days. But I'm afraid what they've done in the marketing is sucked people in by dangling those keys in front of them, going, here's Foggy, here's Karen, here's the Punisher. And then we're going to get like 5 seconds of all of those characters, and they're going to be gone. And we may not see them until the second half of, season 2 or whatever it is. And so that's what it's felt like through 4 episodes, where it's like, I thought I was getting this, but I actually got this. And so, because I feel like they want to be their own thing by adding these new characters, but they know they can't survive without all the stuff tied to the original 3 seasons. And so, yeah, it feels like they want to be a different show, but they're a sequel to another show. So it's kind of, that's how it's felt to me, at least, because it's like clearly the directing style and everything is completely different. Like the way they they film it. Like, remember how the first 3 seasons were like any of the night sequences or anything to do with Hell's Kitchen was real dark and like seedy looking, because they wanted it to look like a scummy underbelly of New York City, which is what it's supposed to be. With this one, everything shot is like bright.
It looks like a Law and Order TV show every single time they're in the courtroom. Like that's what it looks like. Normally, like you're right. Normally it would be like dark or dingy or whatever. But like in the 3rd episode when they're in the courtroom, it's all bright and like there's like.
But even in the scenes where they're out on the street at night, it's very well lit. Yeah. Like it's like you can still. Everything just seems very, And I think some people say like this because I watched a video of a guy explaining it like filmography, and he's talking about how basically the cameras that they use now are so much better that they've almost like modernized out all of the way movies used to look, just because of the qualities of the cameras. Because a lot of it was just the camera's quality wasn't good enough to get that sharp of a contrast or whatever. And so you got those sort of darker lit. But what that also brought was a cinematic feel to it. And I think that with this one, it's like it doesn't look the same. And so, and it's not that it has to look exactly the same, but it also is like, to me, every scene looks bright, whereas you need to have some contrast between your dark sequences. And like the one where they show the Muse character that's murdering the guy, and they're in his, his lair, and they're showing the pictures of the paintings, and they're supposed to be scary, and it's like, but it's so brightly lit that it's just like, it's supposed to come across, I think, is kind of not like a jump scare, but it's supposed to be kind of creepy, and it just comes across to me because the setting is so bright. It's like you just I guess it kind of takes away from what it needs because he's like in the subway tunnels. It needs to be very little light and very dark and creepy looking. And I don't know. I feel like there has to be some contrast between the different settings. Like you can have a bright courtroom or like a bright mayor's office, but you need to have the darker streets and to give it the tone of something being sort of scummy. And I think that they've lost a little bit of that. Like I said, it could be modern cameras. It could be just the direction of the filmographer, whatever it is. But I've just noticed that where it's like I don't feel when I shift from scene to scene, I don't feel like I'm really changing settings. I'm always in that sort of brightly lit thing. Whereas I feel like some of these scenes really need to have. I'd say the only scene that wasn't that way was the Punisher and Matt scene, where the lighting actually felt like it suited the tone of the conversation. But that's for more like people who care that much about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that does set the mood. I mean, people may not realize it, but it really does set the mood for a lot of scenes. And I think, look at Batman. Like you couldn't watch Batman without it being something like that. That's what the comment we made on Batman videos. It's like that's why to me the Batman Begins feels more like it feels more like a Gotham City than Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, whereas they feel like sort of generic New York City or wherever. Because they've lost that, that look that they gave them. They wanted them to look like they were this really crime-ridden, like slimy, dirty city, and I think they captured that really well in the first one. And I think it's kind of the same situation here, where it's like they didn't really have that much attention to detail, I guess you could say.
I mean, I agree. And I don't want to get into a Disney discussion, but I'm going to ask the question: what TV series has Disney done well since WandaVision? And even WandaVision, towards the end of it, like
wasn't as good as the beginning. Yeah.
Hey,
some people would argue.
This one. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I was just going to say, some people would argue Loki. I know Loki's gotten good reviews. I liked most of the first season. I didn't really like the ending, but some people would argue that.
Yeah, I was going to say it's either Loki or this one.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're airing our graps out. Do keep in mind, this is Johnny's favorite superhero, so it was never going to be good enough.
I mean, that's a fair point. Like I said it to begin with. I was like, I don't expect it to be as good as the first 3 seasons, but I want it to be good. And my thing is like, I do watch good TV that's modern, and I know what good TV is. Like, it doesn't have to be like I'm judging it. Yes, from the lens of how does it stack up to the original, but also is it good TV? And I think a lot of times, the way I know that is, am I locked in when I'm watching each episode? Like if I'm looking at my phone, or if I'm just kind of like getting annoyed at things on the screen, I'm not enjoying myself. And so that's how it's been for me, is like there'll be times I'll be looking on my phone trying to distract myself because I'm in a marriage counseling scene or something. And I'm like, this should not be like, how is it that I can be distracted multiple times with this, but I can be watching the scene in, say a scene in season, I'm trying to think of a scene from Daredevil that the first 3 seasons that some people might consider a bit slower. But like the scene of where Fisk and Vanessa go on their date for the first time. Like some people might consider that to be a little bit slow, but there's so much going on there with the characters where she's trying to figure out if she can trust him, what kind of man he is. Is he going to be honest with her? You learn about kind of how she is. And you hear some about his childhood and his backstory. And so you get some of that where it's like, I'm in this marriage session and I just want it to be over. Like, I'm not interested. It just to me feels like it's out of place for this show. Like this doesn't belong here. I told Ethan, I said it felt like, or I told Drew or Ethan one, it felt like a soap opera, and I was like,
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's what I mean by they need to either pick that up, like pay it off, or stop it. But I mean,
well, you know what's going to happen, don't you?
Yeah,
I've already figured it out. Fisk either already knows or is going to figure out that she's Matt's girlfriend, and he's going to exploit that.
Yeah.
Probably sometime near the finale, like 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
But you don't need to go through the marriage counseling like 6 times in a season to figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah. But as far as Marvel TV shows go, you know, a lot of them after WandaVision, you'd watch a couple episodes, 2 or 3 episodes, and you wouldn't even want to watch anymore. So this one's not that bad.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Exactly. So this one's not that bad, but
no.
I get it's not, you know, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, but it's not a 3 or 4 out of 10 either.
And here's my thing, and I want y'all's opinion. Like, in all honesty, I think this is a good discussion point. Do y'all think that because the reason that this show has been so well received is because all of the other shows have been as bad as they've been?
Yes.
Like, do you think if all of the other shows had been towards the level of like the Netflix shows, or at least the good Netflix shows, obviously, you know, ones like Iron Fist is bad.
Jessica Jones was
was okay. Like, I like the character, but the show was kind of boring. Defender's not great. But like, just say Daredevil, Punisher, Luke Cage, like they're all pretty good. If the other MCU shows had been to that level and this one had come out, would it be getting the positive reception that it's getting now?
It wouldn't be getting the 80s or 90s that it's been getting on, which it's dropped. But you know, it was getting like 80s, mid 80s.
I think it was in the 90s on like audience reviews.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be getting that high. Like if this had come out,
while we're talking.
Like if this was season 4, like coming out right after season 3 of Daredevil, like heck,
it would have been blasted. It would have been like, what is going on?
Like, like what happened? Like, what are we doing?
It's like what is it? Arrow, like season 3 or season 4? That like the first 3 seasons or something of Arrow were really, really good, and then season 4 came about and he just dropped off the cliff.
It's the one after Deathstroke.
Yeah.
No, it was the one after Ra's al Ghul, which was season 3. Sorry, I used to be a big Arrow guy.
Yeah, but like it dropped off
too, right?
It dropped. So season 1 was Merlin. And then season 2 was Deathstroke, which to me is the best season.
Yeah.
Season 3 was Ra's al Ghul, and then season 4 was Damien Dark, and that was not.
Yeah,
those were things. Now,
I was thinking.
To their credit, they sort of bounced back in season 5 with Prometheus's character, and then it kind of fell off a cliff after that. But that example,
5 seasons is pretty good.
4 out of 5.
But my point is like, that's basically what we've gone to, is like the first 3 seasons of Arrow, and then that 4th season comes along and you're like, what just happened? And
that's my thing. Like, you made that point though. It's like, no, it would be blasted. So why isn't it being blasted by more?
Because
I've heard some people that are as big a fan of the originals as I am, that are roasting this show. And I have been generous to this point, but I've also made it clear that I've not enjoyed it for the most part. And so, but I'm trying to let it play out, because I'm hoping that, because, you know, originally it was supposed to be a really long season, maybe the last like 10 or 12 episodes of those 18 are actually really good, and the first like 6 or 7 are just setup. But like, I also want to be invested in the setup, and right now I'm not, you know. So that's my thing, is like, I feel like
Marvel's been so bad since.
I feel like that's the thing. And I just looked at it. It's at an 81% audience score right now.
It'd probably be in the
89 critic score. To me, that yes, you can compare it to MCU shows, but when it's billing itself as a sequel to the originals, you have to stack it up against that first. Like, I think to me, that's like, because they are automatically connecting it with that, because they've said it is a sequel to that. To me, that's the first thing you have to compare it to. And then at the same time, you can say, okay, well, how does it stack up against these? Because I would still probably rather watch some other MCU shows at times than this one, because to me, they're just more entertaining or more interesting at times. Whereas this one can really drag at points where you just get a lot of scenes that you just don't care about. Just feels like a lot of wasted space. Whereas with those, at least, I'm not saying they're good, but I'm just saying they could be more entertaining at times. But
So
yeah,
here's my second question. Take the four episodes we have right now, right? If everything you know and everything you saw in these 4 episodes were 2 episodes, how would you feel about this show?
I think I would feel more positively towards it. I think because, and this was something we brought up in the first review, is like, I feel like you could have done an entire season leading up to Foggy's death.
Yep.
And paid that off. Or someone else made the point, do some character development, help these newbies who never watched the original show see why Foggy is so important to Matt and Karen through that first episode. And at the very end of the first episode, then have Bullseye kill him. Like, then you could have that whole episode to explain how Bullseye got out and why he's after him and where they are. You build that up. And like, that's, I think the biggest issue with that is it just kind of happens like boom within like 5 minutes of you turning the show on. And so there's just not any, like, for a newbie who has not seen any MCU stuff or any Daredevil stuff, they're going, who the heck is this Foggy guy and why is everybody so tore up about it? Because they're not invested in the character. Yeah. And so I think they had the impossible task of trying to meld this with the first 3 seasons and the MCU. But I don't feel like they succeeded particularly well because, like you said, they've kind of, to me, they're moving too quickly and explaining too little. And I think that's kind of, it's just leaving a lot of, well, what's this about or what's that about? It's just leaving a lot of question marks and head scratch. Like you said, a lot of head scratching to just, like, what's the bigger picture here? And like, they're about to enter this Muse guy into the picture, and it's like, you still haven't really established, like, we just did all this White Tiger stuff and now it's kind of gone. So it's just like, I don't know. The entire season 1 is about Wilson Fisk's plot and how everyone is trying to do it, how Matt's learning to try to do all this on his own and then realizes, okay, he's got to have the help of, Ben Urich, and he's got to have the help of his Foggy and Karen and all these people. Then season 2 is about the Punisher and sort of the ramifications of his mayhem and everything. And then season 3 is obviously what happens when you let the beast out of the cage, in the sense of Fisk. They let him loose and he tricked him into thinking, and now you're basically back in the same situation you were in season 1, but the stakes are a little bit, I think, raised a little bit. So I don't know. I think this one, it's like you don't have a path that makes a lot of sense right now. And they need to start establishing some sort of concrete overarching plot outside of, they're just trying not to be them. Because we know Kingpin's still him, and we know Matt is eventually going to be Daredevil, because we've seen the trailers. So how long are we going to marinate in that is my thing. It's like, we know it's coming, but you got to make that wait worthwhile. And I just don't think there's been enough interesting stuff to really suck. And the viewing numbers for this, by the way, are terrible. Like, they released some of that, and they said it's charting through like the first 2 episodes. It was charting worse than The Acolyte did, which is pretty, by like 4 million views or something. So like, it's not even a close margin. And so when you're struggling for views, you got to get people invested. And I think a good thing to do would be like, hey, put Daredevil on the screen and have him beat up some people. That'd
I think
probably
you'll get
help a
it
little
next
bit.
week.
You
You'll
will,
get it next week.
but how many people hang around for 5 episodes is the question. So
I do think the Batcave on top of the
that was kind of cool. Yeah,
It was
I
kind of
like
cool.
that. And the little stick thing he had with the little it was similar to the one the dude sliced him up with in season 1. It was kind of like he was doing a little. That was I'm kind of interested to see how he uses that. But.
Saying they're doing a good job of that. I'll say this, that every episode so far has ended, and I want to watch what's next. Like the last scene of every episode's been. I'll give it that, if nothing else.
They just need to do that for an entire episode.
Just need to do that for the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not going forward, I think we are at the tipping point of this season. Like we're talking about this, it's about to get very.
Oh, we're what? Almost technically. I mean, I guess about halfway through.
Yeah, about halfway. I think this is the point where we're gonna start seeing.
Yeah.
How that's going to tie in. I just don't know how that's going to work because as soon as he becomes Daredevil, Fisk is going
to start come after him.
And then now you're adding this Muse guy into the pic. I feel like there's going to be too many moving parts for this to make a lot of sense.
And Bullseye fits in this somewhere. Who knows?
Maybe.
Maybe he was just there.
Maybe he's just a plot device. Maybe he just was the thing.
And is Punisher just a plot device, or is he?
I think he was just a cameo. I really do think.
I think he's probably done too.
It felt like a cameo, like big time, like a pep talk, and then go out and see you later.
That's what I think. And obviously, we're not getting a White Tiger.
Yeah, unfortunately, no. Well, actually, I've heard. Apparently, I think in the comics, it is his niece or whatever that
it does pass to her.
So I think they hint at it.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. She looks like a preteen.
Yeah, she's probably like 13-ish, 14.
So,
she's tiny.
Yeah.
And because Charlie Cox is a short dude and she was real small next to him.
Right. She was like at his belly button.
Yeah. He's not a tall. He's probably like under 6 foot or right at 6 foot.
Hey, watch it.
I'm just saying, not a tall dude. But no,
Well, here's a little intel for you. You're talking about whether or not the Punisher or Frank Castle's in the, is more than one episode. On IMDb, he's listed as being a part of 14 episodes.
Which would be nearly all of the rest of them, right?
Yeah.
It'd have to be.
Well, that's good.
So that's
the 10 minutes he was on the screen, I was loving it. So
yeah.
It was my favorite 10 minutes of the show so far, by far. Because he felt the most in character, he just picked up right where we saw him in the Punisher season 2, right there.
And apparently Vanessa Fisk is only in 4 episodes.
So she done?
Well, she wasn't in the first 4.
She was in the 3. First. She was. She's been in all of them so far.
She's been in all of them.
So she might be done. I'm just going based off IMDb.
I don't. Do they? I don't know how much they actually. I don't know.
Those aren't always accurate, but if that is true, then I'll be singing from the rooftops.
Because and that's another point, I guess. And I know we probably need to wrap up here soon, but that's another point. Is what's she got in all this? She's run his whole operation for however long he was gone. What's her whole? Is that what she's trying to do? Is get back prominent there, or what?
I would venture to guess if you're right about that, Sykes, that it's if that IMDb information is correct. Just my perception and this is all speculation, all theory, from watching them try to mend things, I would not be shocked if Muse or some other character kills her and he goes berserk because of it.
Yeah.
That would not.
Or one of the gang.
Yeah.
They get tired of playing
because that seems to be the way it's leaning. In some respects, I feel like they're going to start to mend things, and then something's going to happen to her.
And
Or
then
maybe,
and
yeah.
then Fisk is going to go crazy, and then Daredevil has to come back because Fisk is back.
Because Fisk is going crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's which if I heard from someone the episode release, we're getting episode 5 and 6 next week. Like in the same night.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably because it's going to be a lot of Daredevil in those more than likely. So yeah, I'm more I feel like I'm a little bit more interested than I was. Like Drew said, I think the thing this one does is it at least hints that the pace of the show could be picking up a little bit in the next episode, because I feel like for me that's been part of the problem is like if there it's not that I have to have all this action, because like the first 3 seasons had a lot of scenes where there was not a lot going on, but they made it worth your while. That's not my problem, and I'm not saying that having a bunch of Daredevil beating people up is going to change that, but I'm saying I think if the fact that there hasn't been much action at all, and also all the other stuff hasn't been the most interesting, it's kind of made it very meh at times. And so I think it's going to benefit them quite a bit if they add in some good old fashioned Daredevil kick buttery, and
Well, they did that in episode 2.
the very end of episode 2, and then the
That's
one
what made
fight
you want to
scene.
watch episode 3. And
Well,
I liked in episode
yeah,
3 when he was like, "You're gonna have to bring more next time."
the episode 4, yeah, where he's like tells the guy, yeah, that was pretty good. I like that. There are moments, like they have their moments where they have some good scenes. I just want them to string all that together, like do that the whole show. Like it's possible if you can do it for that one scene, do it for the whole show. And so I don't know that these people are capable of that. Like, no offense, I just don't think they're up to the task of that based on what I've seen. But we'll see. I think these two may be the most interesting, considering the trajectory of the story right now, of what little we know, at least. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I think I'm a little curious. I wouldn't say I'm excited, but I'm a little curious to see what they decide to do with the episode 5. So more than likely the return of Daredevil. So that should be
We're here for it.
interesting. Yeah, we're here for it. So